La Llorona hunting. So you want to walk on the wild side, huh? My dad and I were kind of junkies for this sort of thing. Now, don't get me all wrong or misled here. You want to actually see and touch the supernatural, right? You're not those kinds of people who just talk about it and then chicken out. You see a horror film and you think of plans on how to observe it and beat it, or even use it to your advantage. You're the kind of person who would enjoy seeking a hunt. Unfortunately, I can't tell you how many times my father and I went out to find nothing. It happens, you know. You can't ask the supernatural to appear on a whim. Everyone in San Antonio area knows the story of La Llorona, and any child could tell you that La Llorona walks the banks of a river, crying and seeking out the children she drowned before she can enter heaven. I'm pretty sure, after hearing all the stories, she's not a particularly vengeful spirit. If you don't know La Llorona, you need to research her story for yourself. You personally need to make a decision. I am not going to type out her backstory for you because it takes away your choice on whether or not you want to pursue the hunt. So stop right here if you're a Yankee from the north or need a refresher on the spooky tale. You'll only fool yourself into thinking you're ready when you're really just unprepared. La Llorona hunting goes like this. Drive along the banks of the Guadalupe River or San Antonio River with your car headlights off. Keep mindful of other motorists and go slowly. Listen closely for the sounds of weeping or a woman calling out for her babies in Spanish. Once you hear the cries, stop the car and turn it completely off. Hopefully, you might see her walking along the riverbed, crying and calling out. Just watch. Don't interrupt her or anything, and don't try to interrupt her search. It's a fun game that my dad took me along for. I started this hunting when I was just 4 years old, and I was sitting in my dad's truck as we were driving back from San Antonio. We used to hunt together until I was about 6. I mentioned that most of the time when we went hunting, nothing was actually found, except the very last time. I was 6 years old and it was my birthday. My dad forgot about getting me presents or even a cake, so he drove to San Antonio after getting off work, telling me that I could pick out anything I wanted. I was upset, of course, because as a kid we all want our birthdays to be special. The idea that our parents forgot about it or didn't care enough hurts us. It was already late and the stores were all closed. I was sitting in my seat crying for the millionth time, and my dad tried to appease me by buying a chocolate shake from Whataburger. Of course, I was crying so hard that the shake just dropped out of my hand, and my dad instinctively yelled about the product staining the floor. He pulls over to a car wash and starts scrubbing and vacuuming the floor, having enough of my tantrums and telling me to grow up about having a crappy birthday. I just turned on my shoulder and told him that I wanted to go home and I didn't want to be out here anymore. My dad gets angry and stressed, slams the door shut and tells me that if I don't stop over spilt milk, he'll find La Llorona and give me to her. He has sort of a bad temper and doesn't really think his jokes are as offensive as they seem. Summer nights in July are hot and unbearable, so when he hits the first bank of the San Antonio River outside of San Antonio, he shuts off the lights and stares at me. He finally tells me that he's sorry he forgot my birthday and that he had to work so late. He loves me and he's grateful that for another year he gets his daughter. I wipe away the snot and tears from my face and say, "I forgive you, Daddy. I love you." He hugs me from across the seat and tells me that I can stop crying now and he'll take me back home. Daddy, I'm not crying anymore," I respond. There's a moment of silence before my dad quietly says, "Don't look outside." And as a 6-year-old kid, of course, you're going to look. I try to twist my head around and all I see is a brief glimpse of a hand pressing the passenger side window, saying, "Mija," over and over, followed by some sort of Catholic prayer in Spanish. My dad reacts rather poorly and hastily, pulling his pistol and shooting at the window twice. The window glass falls down, and it's then that my dad has realised he's rendered his child vulnerable. All I'm doing is screaming and wailing, not knowing what the hell is going on. The car isn't turning on. My dad is shouting. I'm crawling over the seat, forgetting my dad has a ready weapon in his lap. The gun discharges. There's a sharp, short shock on my leg, and behind me I can hear noises of someone is trying to crawl through the passenger window with their whole body. From stress of the body I throw up, and my mac of cheese dinner is all over the dashboard of my father's truck. I can feel a warm hand around my ankle, almost gripping it. And then there's a warm light that floods the windshield, bright white lights that encompass and burn my eyes, making them sting. High beams. Another car was travelling towards San Antonio and had high beams on, passing us by without stopping. My dad holds me close and kisses me, telling me that he loves me. The car turns on suddenly, and he guns the gas, holding me in his lap, all the way back home. I must have passed out, because I don't remember the drive. It isn't until morning that I see the damage. The window is broken completely, and glass is all over the passenger seat. Dried vomit is now stuck to the dashboard, and it smells like sour milk and rotten garbage. The bullet only grazed me on the shallowest surface of the skin, leaving a very unique burn mark. There's no other evidence of another person in the car. After spending a day in shock and grief, my dad cleans his car and sells the first chance he gets. He immediately resolves to work on his temper and took therapy twice a week for 6 years. And no matter how bratty or obstinate I get, he never once tells me he'll give me away or kick me out. I should mention that the tears or weeping of children bring out La Llorona faster. I don't want to, because I know some of you will intentionally drag your little ones out there, like my dad did, to lure her just to quench your thirst. Just remember, someone out there is always going to want your precious angels, and I doubt very seriously they'll give them back. Demon in the window. Before you read any further, I want you to know that I have not hyped up or altered any of what you are about to read to scare you. I'm not easily scared, and what happened to me frightened me more than I've been in a long time. That being said, you might feel the same way after you read this. The information, locations and dates have not been changed in any way. It is important for you to know I have been involved in ghost hunting for many years. I run tours at haunted locations for newbie ghost hunters and thrill seekers. And prior to the investigation, we have a short Q&A session. At these functions, it's almost a guarantee that someone will ask me if a ghost can follow them home. I used to say something along the lines of, I don't see why not. They can be bound to a certain areas, but many spirits come and go as they please. But you probably shouldn't worry yourself. One night after an investigation of a Swansea, Massachusetts residence changed the way I felt about that answer. The investigation was conducted as normal, and after we were done, the equipment broke down. Packed into the van, and off we went. While driving back to Cranston, Rhode Island, to where our cars were parked, we discussed how we felt the night went. Nobody had any eerie feelings. We all agreed that it felt quiet, and we could only base any further conclusions after what we could find in our evidence review. It was shortly after 1 a.m. when I got to my house in Attleboro. As soon as I walked through the door, I put my equipment case at the base of the stairs to my room and climbed into bed. I then proceeded to have the worst nightmare that I've ever had. The dream happened like this. I was alone. It was a dark night with a clear sky. The moon and the stars were visible. Although I had no light to use, I could still see what was ahead of me. I was in a labyrinth of some sort, walking deeper and deeper into the winding pathways. The labyrinth had tall, overbearing walls with some small glass windows just big enough to see through. Every time I would look at the windows, a skeletal face would stare back at me on the other side. It was like the walls were hollow and something was following me inside of them. My heart would race if I looked at the windows, so I kept my eyes forward and focused on the maze. I finally came to the centre of the labyrinth. There was an oval-shaped tomb-like building with a barred door on the front with two separate keyholes. Subconsciously, I reached into my pocket and pulled out a key. As I looked at the key, a hissing whisper came about in the background of the dream, saying, "This key has one purpose. This key can unlock this door." I put the key in the first keyhole and unlocked the door. As I opened the door, it was dark, and there was a faint glow of orange light that I could see from the top of a spiral stairway. As I began down the stairs, I encountered this cloaked, starved, skeletal monster. Its skin was stretched tightly across its face. It had very small patches of long, straggly hair, and as it held up a lamp close to its face, I could see more clearly. Its eyes were fixed on me, and it smiled, revealing a few black teeth. At this point, I ran back to the door. I tried to lock it, but the key wouldn't work. I remembered it saying that the key could only unlock the door. I started to trace my way back through the maze. Its voice became louder in the background as I unleashed it from its tomb. I can't remember what was being said because I was running for my life. I finally came to the exit of the maze. There was a short road that I followed that came to the driveway of a large mansion. I thought I was safe for a second, and as I started towards the house, the figure appeared again at the front of the mansion gate. It held up its hand like a puppeteer would and conjured two large black dogs. The dogs chased me through the yard, and I climbed a fence to get away. On the other side of the fence, I ended up in some neighborhood that felt familiar, but there was no one in any of the houses. I entered a coffee shop and sat down at a table. All of a sudden, there was loud banging on the windows of the shop. The banging became increasingly louder until I closed my eyes, and at that moment I woke up, unaware and confused for a moment. I collected myself, then I heard banging. I thought I was still dreaming. Unluckily, this was reality. All of the hinge windows to my room were open. It is impossible to open these windows from the outside. There is a lock mechanism that goes through the top of the window and into the wall, which then has a sliding lock bolt come through the side of the mechanism to keep the window from moving completely. Still slightly shocked, I closed all of the windows. I then grabbed my digital voice recorder and hit record. I put the recorder on the edge of my bed and went upstairs to see if any more windows were open. None of them were. Upon returning to my room, I listened back to the recorder. While I was upstairs, I captured something or someone banging on the window again. It could not get it open this time, and with a frustrated, hissing whisper, it said, "Damn you." The same voice from my dream. It was the voice of that monster in the tomb. Whatever was behind that door that I opened was in my room that night. It made its presence known. Since then, there's been no sign of it here. I've heard its voice. I've drawn its face. I will not forget what happened. You may choose to believe this or not, it's up to you. But from now on, I caution everyone, if you dabble with spirits, you need strong willpower. They can come into your life, and when they do, it can be frightening. This happened the night of March 8th into the early morning of March 9th, 2014. This was written on July 9th, 2014. that's it for tonight, my little hellhounds. If you've enjoyed tonight's scary stories, then why not comment and click the like button and click the bell icon so you get notified every time I upload, and don't forget to subscribe. If you have any scary stories you want narrated on the channel, then submit them to Reddit r/homeofscares and follow me on Twitter at homeofscares. Now, good night, my little hellhounds.